John and Anna, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you. So happy to be here.
Yeah, for those who don't know you, tell me a little bit about your history, your story together.
Sure. Yeah, well, I'm a writer. I've published over 30 books, but I am also a married writer, and that's particularly relevant today. And I'll tell you a little bit about how we met. This is my wife, Anna. And so when we were in our 20s, sometime back, one night
Just a
we
few years
both just
ago, right?
happened. It was recently. It could have been last week. I'll check my calendar. But anyway, one night we happened to attend the same party connected to an institution that we both were tangentially related to. We didn't know each other, both at this party, and across the room, across the floor from each other, in a crowded room, we locked eyes, and it was a Tony and Maria moment, like right out of West Side Story.
Yeah.
I saw this girl across the room and thought, man, she looks just smart and adorable and gorgeous. Like, just like ding, 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 ding. All the bells are going off. She looked at me and I don't know what she thought. She'd have to tell you, but hopefully it wasn't too terrible. And we never actually crossed the room. I didn't know her name and I still didn't know her name. In fact, I didn't know her name until 20 years later. The first time we met and spoke words, our paths happened to cross again and at a business convention we were both connected to. And I was like, that's the girl across the room. And I say this because it's like for years, I felt like I was a person in the universe putting out tractor beams, putting out the satellite signal to the world, waiting for it to bounce back. And when I met Anna and talked with her for just 10, 15 minutes, the signal's bouncing back. It was like, oh, there is intelligent life in the universe. We just clicked. We just clicked. And we became fast friends and as well as colleagues. And for a while, we just were friends and just talked like crazy and couldn't wait for each chance to meet each other and chat some more and got to know each other as really fast friends. And then it exploded into a romance, much to both of our absolute surprise. And so we we uh we were a couple for years before we finally actually got married. We had both been married previously. And we were both, I'm not going to say gun shy, but something along those lines. We were both
Cautious. Yeah.
cautious. And then, so by the time we married, uh, 12, 13 years ago, we really knew each other well. And here we are, all these decades later. We've been together for 25 years and now we published a book together on marriage.
I love that. What a fun story. I resonate with that, the image that you painted of sending out those beams, looking for somebody to reflect back at you what you were
Yes.
trying to put out into the universe. And there is really something magical that happens when the story. I don't want to belabor the point here because people have heard my story before on the show, but just you probably haven't. My wife and I, when we met, we were friends also. We were just really good buddies and we hung out a lot, but it wasn't romantic. And I came home from a date one
Fantastic.
day and we hung out the next day. And my wife, I was telling her about the date that I went on and how frustrated that I was that I just wanted to play this game. I wanted to play the game of relationships and I wanted to do it at a high level. And I just wanted to find somebody who wanted to play the same game I wanted to play. You know,
Yes.
like I'm showing up with the basketball and people just want to kick it down the road. It's like, no, I just want to play this game. And that's when it clicked for her that maybe she wanted to play that game too. And there's really is something magical about finding somebody who reciprocates that signal that you're sending out or somebody who shows up and wants to play the same game that you want to play.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. So what's your side of this story, Anna?
My side of the story is that I thought he was the cutest person I'd ever seen uh, in that first room, but I was there with someone else, and I would never ever even make one gesture of flirting if I was on a date with someone else. So it just went by. Years later, when we met, I knew immediately it was him, but I didn't think he would recognize that it was me, which he did. Which, that's always a bonus. You're 20 years older and he still remembers you. Um, yeah, we became we had a real intellectual connection. We're both writers and I'm a therapist and John is a deep thinker. And I have to say that I was really looking, for somebody who's a deep thinker. That's always been an agenda for me, if you will. At the same time, I wasn't looking at that moment, but yeah, we just had a very strong intellectual connection, and our friendship was just very strong. And so it just, it just unfolded. It was just so completely natural. When you fall in love in that kind of way, I think it's different than that immediate spark of romance that so many people experience, and that has a falseness to it as well. So
Yeah.
becoming friends first, and also dating for 10 years. We had 5 children between us that were teenagers. And I was really adamant that moving kids together at that stage of development was a very bad move. And I also felt that we both needed to be absolutely certain that there were no red flags on the field, if you
Yeah.
will. I know that most of your listeners are married, but my greatest advice to people who aren't is take your time, because there's no need to rush. There's no need to rush to the altar. And there's a lot of opportunity. People will show up as themselves if you give them enough time. And when their real self shows up, you might find that they want terribly to be codependent with you. They might have some control issues. They might be trying to tell you who they need you to be rather than who you are. Those are real moments that you want to pay attention to.
Love that.
Although I will add that I urgently and vehemently wanted to get married right away. And it was, I really did. I mean, I was absolutely dead centered.
Yeah.
I said, we got to get married right now. And we have to. I mean, this is what I need. I just need this to happen right now. And Anna was the one who said, I don't think the timing is right. I think we both need time. I think you need some time. And I was like, no, I don't need time. I know what I want. But she was absolutely right. I absolutely needed some time. Even though I was already in my 40s at that point, I still really had some pretty major discoveries to make about myself, about who was I going to be in this process. And in fact, as certain as I was I needed to get married right now, 3, 4, or 5 years later, I began to be less certain, not about her, but about me. I reached a point, actually, Nate, where I wondered if I was capable of marriage, because it hadn't worked out for me before. And it worked out for my parents, but it didn't work out for me. And I actually started thinking, is there something in my makeup that this somehow am I going to sabotage this? And I became uncertain about myself. It was really 10 years into our togetherness, our existence as a couple, where I was just completely like, I got this. I understand. We are here. We are us. We're like the roots of an oak tree that go down 50 feet. Can't be budged.
Will you tell me more about that journey from certainty to uncertainty and back to certainty again? I'd actually love to hear some more about the details there.
Sure. Happy to. I'd start by saying that for me, I think in my 20s and 30s, looking back, I was so full of confidence and so full of certainty about what I was doing, whatever it was I was doing. And looking back, I feel like I was a ball in a pinball machine going bing, 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 bing. I have a very, very interesting career. I've done a lot of different things. There was so much about myself I didn't know. And I was not, one thing I will say about my younger self was that it was difficult for me to take in other people's perspective. My parents, older friends, or people who had words of advice to give me, I was really not typically open to hearing them. I had, at the same time, I think that I was not at all clear on what my own strengths and weaknesses were. I like to say that I would, if I could give my 20-year-old self advice, it would be to have more faith and less certainty. Because I had plenty of certainty, but really not so much faith. It was like a tree without roots.
Yeah.
And I think that I didn't, for example, in a relationship, really know how to share my feelings, how I was feeling. There have been many times early in our relationship where I would be upset about something and Anna would say, what's going on for you? And I would realize in that moment, I didn't know. I couldn't articulate it. I'm a pretty smart guy. I can put things on paper really well, but I couldn't put myself in words well. And so I would stumble and stammer and say, well, I don't know. I just feel bad. And then she would patiently sit with me and I would kind of start working it out. And I would discover about how I felt about something and how I felt about a person and how I felt about a situation. I became better at listening to my own intuition and my own instincts. And a lot of that growth really happened as a result of being in this patient relationship with Anna. Sounds like I'm talking about my therapist.
Well, she is a therapist. But the skill set that comes with being a therapist just so happens to be a really great skill set for being in a romantic relationship with
In
somebody.
a relationship, yes.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. Now, Anna, it sounds like I want to touch on a couple of things that you said because I think you pointed out some really great things. One, you both mentioned the importance of having a foundation of friendship in your relationship and what an important role that was. And you can pick any one of these points and elaborate on if you'd like. The second thing that I heard that was really that I loved is the importance that intellectual intimacy plays in your relationship and how that attracted you together. And I think in the world, most people put so much focus on sexual intimacy and chemistry, but we tend to devalue things like spiritual intimacy or intellectual intimacy or social intimacy. There's all these other aspects of life through which we can connect with one another and develop a really meaningful relationship. And the fact that intellectual connection and the intellectual intimacy is so important, I think is really interesting. And you also mentioned how getting married, as beautiful as marriage is, and as much as you probably wanted to be together, you took into consideration the fact that you had teenagers, and blending families can be really difficult. So I'd actually love for you to talk a little bit more about any one or all of those things and your experience with them and why, I don't know, why you think people need to know more about that.
I think that if you're not whole with yourself before you get into a relationship, then you're always seeking to attach to somebody who's going to complete some aspect of yourself that you haven't figured out.
Yeah.
And I think that intellectual connection is really powerful simply because I think a lot of times people make assessments about people based on their sexual attraction or their immediate spark of flirting. And flirting is not a normal conversation. It's a fun conversation.
Yeah.
But it's not the everyday conversation of, honey, can you get some more milk when you go out? If it's
I
and
need
I
some
think
cream for my bunions.
yeah,
Yeah.
More to the point, yes.
you got it. And I think that I think that if you have that creative connection, if there are ways that the two of you really spark each other mentally and the conversations are really interesting and fascinating, you have a world of opportunity and potential for that to be a continued journey. Because I find that people who are very interesting intellectually are usually people who are still very curious. And just like a child is curious when they're very young and they were constantly soaking up new learning, some adults get to adulthood, and especially when they marry, they want to get their needs met in the marriage. They want to get the food that they need from the marriage. And the truth is, you have to feed you. You can't expect another person to complete you. You have to remain an individual who continues growing. So that intellectual curiosity is part of that. It doesn't matter whether you're taking on a new avocation, decided to study nature photography, or you've decided John took up a brand new career at 46. He became a writer. And now he had been writing. Prior to that, he had worked for magazines. He'd been the editor-in-chief of magazines. So he'd been a writer, but he'd been an editor and a writer. He decided to write books. He decided to write stories. He decided to write parables. And this was a whole brand new track for him. So there was a lot to talk about, a lot. And I'm published multiple times over in psychology circles. And so I, had my own thoughts on writing and what constitutes great writing. And I had studied creative writing for years in college. So the journey just continues. There's always something new and fascinating to find. If your partner continues to grow, they continue to have a spark that's very interesting to explore. And it gives you new territory. There's a great line in our book that every person is an unexplored continent. There's always something new to find. And that's actually true when you have intellectual curiosity, but also just curiosity about getting to know the heart of how they feel, the things that have hurt them in their life. And earlier I said that if you don't come to some wholeness in yourself, you can't bring it to your marriage. But that doesn't mean, and I would say a good 80% of marriages start without one party or both parties feeling that sense of completion and wholeness and having healed some of their deeper issues. But if there's compassion in the marriage, if there's the ability to have emotional intelligence and express that to each other by listening, then there's a lot of room for healing. Marriage by itself can be a very healing journey
Mm,
if both parties remain open.
mm. Man, there's so much good stuff to unpack in that, in your comment. Thank you so much for sharing. The first image that I had pop into my head is what Dr. John Gottman talks a lot about with the love maps, and this idea of your partner's an unexplored continent. And I think about, so my wife and I recently moved to Costa Rica for a year. We've been here for about 6 months, and it's been this amazing adventure. But what I found, and what kind of stood out to me listening to you, is when you plant yourself in a home, your first goal is to make yourself feel comfortable. And so we found out where we're going to do our grocery shopping. We found out like what direction we need to go to get to the beach. And even though we're surrounded by all this newness and all of this jungle and adventures and cool things, we kind of live our lives along these same routes. We just kind of follow the same path every day. And we don't get out and explore as much as we probably could or should to take advantage of all of the amazing newness around us. And I think we do the same thing in our relationships, where we tread the same path, we have the same conversation, and we just assume, because we know this small collection of facts about our partner, about their interests and their pet peeves and things like that, that we know them, but we forget that there's so much that goes unexplored. And when you tap into that natural curiosity, maybe it's not natural for some people, but tap into our curiosity, it really can bring something unique and amazing to the relationship over and over and over again as you explore your partner. Such a cool, I love that continent example.
Yeah. I mean, just that, the rivers, the mountains, the streams, the forests, it's like,
Yeah.
it goes on and on and on. And I think one also, lovely thing about that is that it tends to be a self-feeding process, where the more you explore and inquire, the more you want to go and explore and inquire, because you find out more and you find out more and you find out more. I mean, we know each other so well, but I'm still finding out so many new things all the time that I've never known, which I expect we will, for the rest of our lives.
What are some of the things that you do to stay curious about each other?
Oh, that's a great
one very simple thing is we actually make time to just have unstructured, just chat. And when I say that we make time, sometimes that takes an effort. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's easy. When our schedule is light, we take walks every day. We walk the dog. We leave the dog at home. We walk ourselves. But when things get really hectic, that tends to go by the wayside, and we make an effort to not let it do that. We say, you know what? We need to figure out a time. There were times when Anna broke her knee. She has broken her knee twice, and both times they laid her up such that she couldn't walk. And that tends to be our time to just talk about anything and everything, like Tom and Tess in the book, two characters in the book. And we couldn't, because we weren't taking walks. I was taking the dog by myself. We had to actually figure out ways to make time to sit with each other, to go in the car or whatever it took, to find time where we had unstructured time to talk together. I think it's so important to have time to just talk about whatever is on either one of our minds, and the other one just listens.
Where do you get the questions from that you ask each other that, because I think most people get comfortable with that. How was your day? What's new for you? Anything interesting going on? And I think part of the reason people aren't good at being at the skill of curiosity is because they don't know how to ask good questions. So I'm curious where you get your questions from, if you have any guidance for asking poignant questions that might reveal some of that unexplored territory for the people listening.
I gotta say, you ask the best questions.
Yeah, you do.
Go ahead,
And
sweetheart.
I have a favorite.
I just want to
I have
comment
a
there.
favorite question in that
Thanks.
corner. We're both very growth centered. We see a lot of people that they get into their 40s, they're in a rut. They get into their 50s, they're in a deeper rut. They get into their 60s, they're in an even deeper rut. And they buy the story, that the narrative that society tells them of, you're over the hill, or you're getting old, or you're too old, or, and they buy into all the stories that go with that. I've got arthritis now, and they cling to that as the story, or, whatever the story is.
Yeah.
And so we're very growth centered, and people in our neighborhood, we live in a gated community. People call us the kids, um, because we are still growing, we're still working, we're still doing a lot of things. And so we ask growth centered questions. One of my favorite questions to ask John is, what was your favorite thing that happened to you today that changed your perspective on something and caused you to think in a new way?
Mm, I love that. It's
That's
a great question.
It's a big conversation some days because John is always learning, and he's helped me really shift my inner dialogue. I think that, based on the family you grew up in, you have a story about money, you have a story about success, you have a story that you tell yourself. And, part of the story that I grew up with was a father who said, if you want something done, you better do it yourself. And only hard work is the only way to get to success. And while I agree with the second one, I don't agree it's the only way to get to success. I think that there's a lot of ways that you can expand your thinking that will shift what you're attracting to yourself and also shift everything in your life. So I'm a great believer in just growing your mind as well as growing your, your curiosity and growing your zeal for life, if you will, staying really forward.
And part of what feeds our conversation is that we're each constantly turning up new material. I mean, for example, as Anna said, I started writing books, back in my late 40s. A few years ago, I wrote a thriller, my first novel, and I really did not believe. For years, Anna told me, you'd be great at novels. You'd be a great novelist. You would write great novels. And I would say, thank you. That's very sweet of you. I appreciate the vote of confidence. In other words, I did not believe it. So how do I see it? I did not see that happening. I couldn't see it, but she could. And so she kept saying that just every now and then. And finally the point arrived where I did it. I wrote a novel, a thriller last year, and it was very, very well received. And it's now my new career. I mean, it's not the only thing I write, but the second one's about to be published, and I'm starting to work on the third. In the process of doing that, I'm reading a ton of novels and thrillers in particular, and looking at interviews with famous thriller writers. And I go and I talk to her about it. I tell her what I'm learning from Lee Child or from Karen Slaughter or from Don Winslow or from these amazing people that I'm learning from. And I share it with her, and it's the same with her. She's reading, stuff from marriage therapists and all kinds of new material. She is the most prolific researcher I've ever met. She is constantly learning new things. It's just kind of her nature, and she shares them with me. So part of what feeds our own dialogue is that we're each out there digging stuff up for ourselves, pursuing our interests, feeding our own curiosity.
I think you can tell a lot about a couple by how they talk about each other, but I also think what's even more telling is how the partner responds when they're listening to their partner talk about them. And it was really fun, John, to listen to you speak and have my eye on Anna here and just see the smile creep onto her face as you were talking about her, talking about you, and talking about her. This is a lot about your reactions to each other, say a lot about your relationship, I think. So thanks for being honest and sharing so much of your story.
And I will add something about him as a writer. He has written many, many parables with quite famous people, David Bach and Spencer Johnson. He wrote Spencer Johnson's last parable, Out of the Maze. And and the reason all those projects came to him is that years ago, after writing the original Go-Giver, an editor, a very famous editor in New York, took us to lunch, and he said to John, every couple of decades, a real parable king shows up. And I got to tell you, you're the parable king. And I remember sitting there, I was like, the beaming wife. But I knew it was the absolute truth, because his parables are like little gems. And I will only say this about this one. This is a parable. The first half of the book is a parable. The second half of the book is called The Practice. The first half of the book was written by John. The second half of the book was written by me. And The Practice is is putting it in a nutshell. I was, with permission, allowed to tell some client stories that illuminate each secret and its opposite. You know, how do things go wrong, and how can you shift them? And so it gives you practical ways to put the 5 secrets into action in your marriage in very simple ways every day. But this parable is a gem. It's not only a parable, but it has a fable within the parable. And I think it's the best parable John's ever written. I mean, it's just a brilliant little jewel. So I do.
A fable hidden inside a parable, hidden inside a book.
Yeah,
exactly.
And I do look forward to hearing from readers. And I do want readers to know that they can contact us on our website, and that we read the letters, not some person working for us. And
what's your website, so people who read can know where to reach out to you at?
It is gogivermarriage.com, all one word. And yeah. And, you know, we have workshops and all kinds of programs that we offer as well that people can check out. But we do want people to know that we love interacting about it, because people are so rich in their understanding of, like, wow, this was a big game changer for me. This one secret really shifted things. And it only takes one person in the marriage to change the entire tone of the marriage.
Yeah.
And that's one of our central messages. We really want people to understand this is not couples therapy. This is not a how do you manage this or that. It's more, how can you shift the tone of the marriage? How can you bring a renewed sense of passion and love to your marriage?
I love that this isn't a book that you read, it's a book that you do. That's
yes.
Yeah. Sorry, John, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's such a great point. That's what we really, you know, we wanted to come at the material from several different angles so that anybody can find their doorway in. If you'd like to read stories, front half of the book. If you like more how to, back half of the book. They all work. But we, you know, it's interesting genesis, because for years, people, friends of ours, would ask us, what's your guys' secret sauce? Why do you act like newlyweds? You know, or you feel like you just got married when you've been married for a decade. You've been together for 2 decades. And we were at a business meeting once. We'd done some traveling. It happened to be our anniversary, but we couldn't be at home for the anniversary because we had this meeting we had to get to across the country. So we were at this meeting, and on the way to the meeting, we were driving to it, and we had agreed we wouldn't give each other anniversary gifts that year. It was just too complicated. I pulled out a card and I said, but I did get you a card. And I wish I had him with us right now. I pulled out a card that had a picture of like a 5-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl. And the boy was giving the girl a kiss. And Anna, who was driving, reached into her purse and pulled out a card that she'd gotten for me. And it showed a 6-year-old girl giving a kiss to a 6-year-old boy. It's like, oh, you can't make this stuff up, you know? So people would ask, what is your guys' deal? Why are you so ridiculously, insanely compatible? I think in the process of writing this book, we kind of had to reverse engineer it ourselves, because we just were that way. And this gave us an opportunity to reverse engineer it and articulate it, because it's not just magic. It's not just that we go together. It's not just that we're like peas and carrots, like Forrest Gump and Jenny. Mm-hmm. We've worked at it actively. These are actually practices that we've applied in several ways every day, that we kind of learned out of our own studies, as well as out of our own experiences with marriages that didn't work, as well as this marriage that is working. And one of the orientations or the stresses of the book is that love is a practice. It's not a magical state of being. It's not a happy accident of 2 people who are just made for each other. Even though there is that tractor beam sending that beam sending the signal out and getting it back, you may have that click. But then how do you still have that click 40 years later? That's the question. You know, Harwell Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt said this beautiful thing when they were reviewing our book. They said, falling in love is easy. Staying in love, that's the tricky part. And our contention is that it's like yoga, like meditation, like playing the cello, my instrument, or like writing, or like tennis. It's a practice. It's something that you actually go through the motions and do every day. And there are simple steps that are the ingredients of that practice. And that's what we tried to elucidate in the book.
I love that. So I want I want to get a sneak into the book, and I want to do it through something that Anna just mentioned a second ago. She said one of the the premises of the book is that if you change yourself, if you show up powerfully in the relationship, that you can affect the relationship for change. You can change the tone of the relationship. And it reminds me of what you mentioned earlier in the conversation about needing to feed yourself. And the marriage can't feed you. You need to feed yourself. And if you start taking care of yourself and stop relying on your partner to give you validation, purpose, meaning, self-esteem, that pat on the back, the reassurance that you're okay, and you can get that from yourself, then you can actually contribute to the marriage in a really powerful way. So I'm really curious, maybe if there's a way for you to tell me what one of the secrets are, by also answering the question, what does it look like to feed yourself in the marriage instead of depend on the marriage to feed you? Is there a way to tie those two things together?
There is. And,
yes.
But I also want to say that there's 5 secrets, and the first 4 secrets in all of the Go Giver books are all about generosity and about giving. And the 5th secret is always counterintuitive. It's always an opposition, if you will. It's always something unexpected. So the 5th
to the fingers.
is, yeah. The 5th secret is the secret to grow. And it's the idea that, you've put all this energy and investment into giving to your spouse. But it's important, and really important, that you give to yourself, that you give yourself the nourishment, the feedback, the growth, the ability to take your own curiosity to the next level, that you keep growing emotionally, spiritually, physically, and emotionally. And that can mean for some people that went through a particularly difficult childhood, or they were, have abandonment issues or whatever. That growing could be really doing personal work with a therapist. It can be doing a lot of things that allows you to come back to the marriage and be more whole. But if it's creative, avocations, if you will, there's just the sky's the limit. You could take up skydiving, you could take up photography, learn to be a gourmet cook, be a master gardener. There's just so many, painting, so many ways. Go ahead, John, you have something to add.
I just want to piggyback on this, taking a little bit different direction, but I also want to answer your question in a different way, which is the thing of shifting your focus to growing yourself and taking responsibility in yourself. One thing we talk a lot about in the book is dropping the scorecard. And the scorecard is when I take a look at how many chores you've done and how many chores I've done. Is it fair? It's like leveling the scales.
Yeah.
This comes up in conflict, and there's an interesting shift that happens, which is, let's say you do something that bothers me, or it gets me annoyed, or it gets me irritated. The natural response is, why did you irritate me? What's wrong with you? And it puts us on separate sides of a chasm here. Anna tells this beautiful story in the back part of the book, in the practice part, about a young couple who the woman of the couple had a lot of anxiety from experiences earlier in her life. They were very, very reasonable that she had anxiety. She had some very traumatic experiences.
Yeah.
And so she would have overly anxious reactions in certain situations that drove her husband nuts. And his native response would be like, calm down. It's not that big a deal. What are you making a big deal out of something? It's nothing. And this is an example of being in the, I'm blaming you for this situation. Why are you being so anxious? I'm pointing at you. You should change this. You should do it differently. He reached a point in the course of doing the work and looking at these secrets where he finally identified that what was really happening was, not only did she have good reasons to be anxious, but when she would have her responses, it made him anxious. It made him feel uncomfortable. And the real question was, why are you making a big deal on that? No, the real question was, what is it in me that gets so anxious, gets so reactive? It was, he learned to take the responsibility for his own reactions and start to investigate, where did they come from? Because he too had a past that was feeding his own anxiety.
So I want to know how you guys got, do you have cameras in my house, or are you spying on our relationship? This hits home for me. We literally just had this conversation in my house this week about this exact issue, and 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 me learning to be responsible for the anxiety that comes up when my wife is experiencing anxiety, and also my wife. The other conversation we're having is this has been really interesting. I don't mean to detract from everything you just said because I think it's really beautiful, but it's just hitting home for me right now. Um, my wife has felt that my response to her anxiety is a response to her, or my response to her anxiety is a response to her. And she's like, I don't think you enjoy being married to me sometimes when I'm feeling this way. And I had to communicate to her that I would like to be on her team to fight against her anxiety. It's not me against her. It's me and her against the anxiety or whatever she's experiencing right now. And it took so long for me to be able to communicate accurately how she wasn't hearing accurately what I was trying to communicate. That's what I'm trying to say. And so when we address these two issues of one, like maybe I'm trying to treat my own anxiety by managing her anxiety, and that's not a very healthy thing to do. And then also secondarily, she's taking my frustration with her anxiety as a frustration with her.
As an attack.
As an attack. And it's like, how can we now shift our perspective to team up and confront our mental health issues together as a team instead of using them to pit each other against one another? And so now we have to read your book out loud every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a beautiful illustration.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful illustration.
It is fantastic. Yes, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you.
I was just going to say, okay, I was just going to say the moment that you arrive at or feel yourself arriving at the point where you're on the same team, the moment when you're like sitting on the same bench, looking out the field, it's just so incredible. It is such a source of energy. It's such a source of power. You know, it's a schmaltzy song, You and Me Against the World. I don't love the song, but that spirit of we're on the same team facing whatever it is we're facing. It's something that is just so, nothing beats it. And you feel like you can deal with anything the world throws at you if the two of you are on the same team.
Yeah.
And it also allows healing to occur for both of you, because there's healing that needs to happen on both sides. And whenever somebody has an overly strong reaction to somebody else's anxiety or somebody else's issue, they have an issue with the issue itself. And I find that a lot of men are what I call fixers. Their wife is trying to share a problem, and they're in their mind, they aren't even really listening. They're just trying to figure out how to fix it. And what is needed in that moment usually is just compassionate listening. And yet, I mean, I've known many women that have stopped their husband in their tracks and said, honey, I don't need you to fix this. I just want you to listen right now. And John and I have a joke in our marriage where whenever I've used to come home from work and I was in some situation where I'd come home and need to have a little bit of a rant, he would listen and say nothing. But about every 3 minutes, he would say,
The bastards.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was his way of just putting in one line that was his moment of compassion. Like, oh, yeah, how dare they? The bastards. And it was a joke between us. But at the same time, it's so important to really get to that place where you can listen without trying to fix. And in fact, and this is something that Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt and the Gottmans, all of the different researchers talk about, is can you listen and then reflect what you heard? Say, honey, I heard you say that when you go out by yourself here in Costa Rica and men look at you a certain way, that it brings up a lot of anxiety for you and that you just want to get home as fast as you can because you feel nervous and you feel unsafe. And we're in a new place and a new environment. And it's okay if I go to the grocery store with you until we get more comfortable. It could be that simple. And anxiety is also a hormonal thing. And I just want to give credence to that simply because I had a lot of anxiety in my earlier years. And it was an issue between my first husband and me. And it was hormonal. I didn't have any control over it. Estrogen rises and estrogen falls every single month. And when estrogen falls, whether it's in the middle of a cycle or whether it's at menopause, a lot of women at menopause have tremendous anxiety because estrogen is taking a big dive down. And so it's something that is an ebb and flow that women are frequently experiencing. And I think it's something that doesn't get talked about enough and deserves its own channel of discussion. I mean, we could do a whole hour on the issue of anxiety. And
we could probably do a lot more than an hour. Yeah.
Yeah. And trauma. And also, and it's the trauma, because I think every man and every woman in America has been traumatized by something or someone. And there's nobody that's exempt. And so we don't give enough voice to that. We don't give enough credence or enough ability for it to be a discussion rather than an overt reaction to it. Yeah.
I mean, I love that you brought this up because I honestly believe that the majority of relationship issues stem from anxiety. It's like you fall in love and you meet this person and you're like, we have such amazing chemistry and they make me feel so important and so good. And I want to spend the rest of my life with them. And I want to be as close to them as I can possibly get. And then you get close to them and Kathleen Smith wrote a book called Everything Isn't Terrible. It's amazing. It's all about anxiety. And she talks about this internal smoke alarm that goes off in your head. And when you get close to somebody, that your threat detector, your smoke alarm goes off and goes, hey, they're really close to you. They could hurt you, probably worse than anybody's ever hurt you before. And there's no solution better than distance to alleviate anxiety. So what do? I want to be close to you. Oh, now I need you to get far away because I feel anxious. And we do these crazy things, these irrational things that sabotage the intimacy that we really want with somebody. And we can't experience the closeness and intimacy that we want and feel safe at the same time until we learn to address our anxious and negative emotions that come up for us instinctively. Like it's just part of being a human. And I wish we talked more about this, about the hormonal issues, the natural relationship issues. Like so much of having a healthy, thriving relationship is learning to identify and manage the anxious and negative emotions that come up as a result of just being close with somebody, being in relationship with someone. And
a lot of those are connected to childhood. I personally have worked with somebody who grew up in a household where mom was an alcoholic and dad was on the road, and they never got dinner until 9 o'clock at night at the earliest. And there were more than 5 children in the house under 7. So when you look at that, those kids had terrible anxiety. They wanted to act out. They wanted to carry on and throw tantrums. They were hungry. They were tired, but mom was drunk, and any action whatsoever to express yourself would get you put to bed without dinner, no food.
Yeah.
I mean, this
so you learn not to say anything.
Not only you learn not to say anything, but you learn to can your expression of your feelings in a very profound way to survive. And eventually, when you get into an intimate relationship, all of that wakes up. And I mean, it really wakes up. And, you've heard the phrase, don't ever marry a man who hated his mother. Well, there's some power to that because if he hated her, it's only a matter of time before the projection of her face is on top of you.
Yeah. One other reason we need to be whole and work on ourselves and feeding ourselves and healing ourselves before we enter into a relationship without caution and foresight. So
exactly.
What other tidbits of your book do you want to share that would maybe get people excited to dive in and give it a read? Anything else you want to talk about?
I would like to share one of the secrets that has to do with giving, because the book is really about generosity and putting your partner's needs first. And I like to share that the body of research on happiness really it's just enormous on the idea that for people who are givers, there's so much more happiness. Every cell in their body lights up. Their amygdala in their brain calms down. Their anxiety reduces. Their depression reduces. Giving is they live longer. It's just really powerful. People who are constantly giving are also receiving more powerfully than anyone around them. So I like to share my first secret because, and One thing I really want your listeners to know is that all 5 secrets are based in developmental theory. And all that that means psychologically is that what you needed as an infant and as a child, as an adolescent, as a young adult, and now as a full adult are the same things. So the first secret is so simple, but to carry it out really takes action on your part. And it's the secret of appreciation. And the secret, we have people practice it like 3 times a day to begin with, and then accelerate it to 4 or 5, 6. But find 3 times a day that there's something that your partner does that you love, and or some way that she is that you love, and take the time to express it to her in truly authentic terms. You know, this is not walking through the kitchen and saying, "Hey, looking good today, babe." You know, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real moments where you say to your partner, you know, "You're so sensitive when I come home from work grumpy," and you listen all the time. And I really want you to know, I just appreciate how compassionate you are and how much you really give me space. And I love this about you. And, you know, she walks away feeling like she got seen, she got witnessed, she got heard, she got understood. This is the most primal need we have. So, that is a secret that's got so much power. And it only takes one person in the marriage to practice it. And that's the other thing about the book is that, you know, when you're a therapist, you spend a lot of time unwinding the conflict. Who's right?
Yeah.
Who's wrong? The scorecard is front and center in the therapeutic process often. And it takes time to peel back the layers to get to the wounds underneath it, the emotional needs underneath it that are getting expressed. When you focus your attention on giving, you're turning the channel off the amygdala and onto the pleasure centers, the endorphins, the oxytocin. You're turning on the places in your brain that are looking for goodness and finding it, and looking for beauty and finding it. And for your partner, it's like food. I mean, it's just incredible. And I've had so many men that have practiced the secrets, and even men in men's groups where they hold each other accountable by texting each other every day. And they write to us and say, you know, don't understand. And these are some of our early readers, people who've already read the book. They'll write and say, no, you don't understand. We've been married 14 years and this has changed our whole relationship. And it's like, yes, we do understand. We do. It's a powerful thing to give.
It is. I'm so glad you shared that. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's a great secret. Where can people find the book?
The book comes out on March 8th, but you can pre-order it. You can find information about it, and it's everything about what we're doing around the book, workshops and so forth. It's all on our website, which is gogivermarriage.com. That's all one word, no hyphens, just gogivermarriage.com. I mean, the book's going to be on sale everywhere, but the books are sold. And then there's also some information, as I said, about the programs we're offering, other things that we're doing ancillary to the book. I guess what I just want to add to that is, and it was said so well earlier, this isn't just a book you read, it's a book you do. It's short, it's a quick read, but it's designed to be something that you can practice. It's not complicated, it's not difficult, it's not an enormous commitment of time or effort. It's simple, practical stuff you can actually do every day.
Well, I have really enjoyed getting to know the two of you. I've really appreciated this conversation. In the spirit of appreciation, I'm glad that you had the choice to not write this book or show up to this interview, and you showed up, and my life is better for it. And I know that my listeners will really enjoy it as well. So thank you for doing the work that you do and for using your relationship. One of the things that I teach a lot is I have this thing called the epic marriage blueprint. And the idea is it follows this tree, and the roots of the tree are your friendship. And then the trunk of the tree is your ability to manage your anxiety. And then the branches of the tree are the intimacy, reaching out and connecting with your partner. And then the fruits of the tree are your legacy. And I tell people as they work on their tree from the bottom up, what happens is that the fruits just kind of show up. And it's evident that through your love, this is part of your legacy. This is part of the message and the legacy that you're going to leave behind that's going to outlive your relationship and continue to impact and bless the lives of so many other people. And I don't think many couples get to that place where they get to see a legacy like this come to life. And so I want to admire you guys for really obviously taking your relationship seriously and doing the work so that this legacy could become a reality.
And there's a
Thank you
reason
so
that
much.
there's a reason that there's a tree back here, because there's a tree at the centerpiece of this story, and I can't wait to hear your reactions. So
yeah, I'm going to read it and I'll let you know what I think about it. It's I
Absolutely.
think there's a lot of parallels between what I teach and what you teach. So that's really exciting.
This is a beautiful thing you're doing, Nate. We love what you're up to. And it's important work. It's great that you're doing it. So appreciate it.
Did you enjoy this conversation with John and Anna? If you did, I'm going to leave a link to their book right here. And if you want to hear more conversations like this, I want to invite you to subscribe. I hope you have an amazing day.